Oh my God, this was so exciting.
Good morning.
Good
Good,
morning,
good,
Mai-Liis. Good
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 morning,
morning.
morning.
Betty.
I'm seeing your mouth move at different times. I'm hoping mine moves at the right time. Anyway, just the sound of that music was motivating, I find. It was nice to hear it after what, almost at least a
It's
year,
a year and a half.
year and a half. Wow.
Yeah, May of 2023 is the last time we did a show, so um, this is exciting. I had butterflies in my stomach, like when you're ready to go on a new date, like it's like
Well, I gotta tell
crazy.
you, I didn't sleep very well last night because I was rehashing how it was going to work and all this and that. So yeah, it was exciting, but very little sleep. Like going on a first date, yes.
Maybe we
Happy
should
New
call
Year,
you,
White Tupac. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, Betty, you were saying, sorry.
I was just saying, maybe we should call you the chicks, not the seeker chicks, since we
Well,
successfully did this.
Yeah, well, this is a new software too, so like we're completely like I'm like this is a new thing for me. Like I'm working the back end and it's very different from what we usually took, but everything is going well. I see that we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and um I want to say Twitter, but it's X now, but Twitter nonetheless. So if you're tuning in, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this show. We're back, and we're starting the year with our dear friend Betty, who's always so motivational.
no.
We love starting the new year with her.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you guys.
Betty is one of our writers. She's one of our contributors, and her business is road signs. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, Betty.
Oh my
But
goodness, where to start? Well, of course, with 2025 upon us, I'm just getting that little bit older as well, and we hope a little wiser as well. So I've been around the block a few times, but my most recent incarnation has been with um, our company, of course, Road Signs, which I share with my wonderful husband and partner Jim, and we've been in business since 1997. And as part of that business has been corporate coaching and consulting, and the other side of the business has been our retreat work and our books. Um, but to put it briefly, we use the word road signs as our company name. Road representing the journey of life, and signs representing the many things that we see along the way, but we sometimes fail to pay attention to. And that had been my experience when I first started the company. And in 1999, 98, and or 1999 and 2000, I went on two trips to Scotland. And I realized as I was driving about the country that there were many signs that I did not understand. um, and I started to record them. But what it made me really begin to realize was that I travel the roads here every day, or I travel the road of life, and there were many signs that I was seeing every day, and I never questioned what they meant because they were familiar to me. And I began to reflect on what would it mean if I actually became more mindfully aware of what was crossing my path every day. Was life actually informing me in ways that I was not aware of? And so that's been really the hallmark of our company. And we refer to our other brand as conscious communication, or one could say mindful communication. And that is not only how we communicate with others, because that's the first thing that comes to mind when I say conscious communication. More importantly, how we consciously connect with ourselves. So, so that's a little bit about me. And if you visit our website, roadsigns.ca, you will see that there are a number of books on there that I have written through the years, and um, they're still available if anyone's interested. But anyway,
It's
I
funny
think,
because my son was we were looking for, I think it was Scotch tape the other day, and so I told him to go in my office and look for it, and he was looking everywhere, and he got on my bookshelf, and there was your book. So he pulled it out and he said, "Mom, can I read this?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead." So it's the second one that he's going to be reading.
oh, good. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Betty, I actually sent your two books to my daughter for a Christmas present, so she's got them too. She's excited to read them.
Well, that's good. Thank you for
Hmm.
sharing, you guys. I think the books, when I wrote them, I don't think the books go out of date because they really
No.
are. As I go back and look at them, they're very topical still. And one of my favorite books, I think, was the last one we created, which was called the Me First Playbook. And sometimes people misinterpret the idea of me first. They think it sounds very selfish. Um, but really, the message of the book is if I want anything in my life to change, whether it has to do with a career, my relationships, external circumstances, then I need to look inwardly first and see what needs to change there. Because as human beings, any changes we create within ourselves attract similar changes on the external side of our being. And I think that's a hard lesson it was certainly a very hard lesson for me to learn when I first started our business, and I learned a lot in the early days about the law of attraction, and I actually studied the law of attraction in my coaching program. And it's a challenging way to live because you really do hold yourself responsible, but it's not meant to be mean in the sense that you should be getting down on yourself. It's really meant to be, how can I uplift myself and how can I be better within myself, therefore improving my external circumstances. So,
I'm reading a book presently, and it's very similar. It's called the Let Them Theory,
okay.
and basically, it's just it says exactly what you said. It's two part. You say, if anything happens, you say, well, let them, because you can't control anything that anybody does, right? And then the second part in that is let me. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to look at yourself inwardly and decide how you're going to respond to what's happening. Because yeah, you can control outside of yourself.
That's a really interesting point, Julia. I'm going to look. I'm going to check on the book too. It reminds me, though, one of the early books I read, and it goes back to the '90s, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. Is a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and one of the four agreements that has really helped me in my own personal growth was the agreement called "Don't Take It Personally." And really what is it's a bit like what you were saying, let them, like, other people's behavior, how they act in society, what they even say to you, what they communicate to you, how they may even judge you, is not about you, it's all about them. and it,
Exactly.
and it's through the, like, imagine it's through their glasses or the lens through which they see life. And um, and the other thing the author said, it is really quite egocentric of you to believe that what comes out of other people's mouths or their behaviors is actually about you. Why would you think you would have any control over that kind of thing? And that was the part of the statement that kind of shook me up. I got the other part, but I still, I was still taking things personally. And then when I kind of read, oh yeah, why would I think I have that kind of power over other people? So to that point,
Exactly.
let them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she was giving the example that because I'm just at the beginning of the book, I haven't read much yet, but she's giving an example about her girlfriends had gone on a trip on a weekend getaway without her, and she saw the pictures on Facebook and immediately thought, why are they excluding me? Like, why is this happening to me?
Hmm.
And then she said, well, let them go on a retreat without me. Let them have, they're allowed to do whatever they want. And then let me, she started looking inwardly and thinking, you know what? I've been prioritizing my work a hell of a lot, and I haven't been keeping in touch with these women. So why am I surprised that, I was not included in this because I have not made the time for them.
Right.
So it's just interesting, and it's not like I'm reading this and it's all very familiar. It's not an unknown concept. Like it's very, very familiar. Like, let them. But it has so much, like, the emotions we feel have so much power over us. When you say let them, it kind of releases all the emotion, and it frees you from feeling those negative emotions. And then when you say let me, it's accountability, right? You're looking at your part and why you're feeling the way you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
um, as opposed to putting the responsibility on other people. Because
Yeah.
again, you can't control what other people do. You can
No.
only control yourself and
Yeah.
what you do with that.
Yeah. And I mean that really is the hallmark or the foundation of our Me First message. It's basically anything you want to change in your life needs to change within you first. So, to the example you gave, Julia, a little bit of self-reflection and digging revealed to this individual that she had been neglecting maybe some of the things that were important to her in favor of her work and other obligations. And I think that's where at the beginning of a new year, I would rather see people kind of center within and take a look at what are their maybe emotional, their spiritual, even their physical priorities for the year, rather than making all sorts of New Year's resolutions, and just kind of mindfully examining what is it that you want to attract to your life, or how do you want your life to manifest, if you will, and look at it more energetically than with goal setting.
Yeah, because usually
Yeah.
you see goals and those kind of fade away by about
Yeah.
mid-February, right?
Yeah. Well, and partly because goals have a definite outcome, like I'm going to lose 15 pounds, rather than saying I am attracting my perfect health. And
Right.
mean and so just really re-examining how we use it. And that's part of what our message was in conscious communication, is be very aware of the words you're using, because I follow if anyone I follow www.tut.com, which is the daily message from the universe. And he's always reminding us that words become thoughts become things, is the expression. And
Okay.
words become things because thoughts are
Words
words,
are
right?
powerful.
Yeah,
There's
they are.
power in words. You speak things into existence, literally. Like you can.
Yeah. And friends of mine, and I mean, I'm at a certain age, and so are many of my friends, where many of them start worrying about things like their health, and maybe even finances, of course, because they're you're living as a pensioner, and not having the same income resources you may have had. And I always remind people that a worry, if I'm worried about my health, a worry is an intention. And they go,
Yep.
what? Like, it's like, oh no. Well, it is, because where your what's the expression, where your attention goes, energy flows.
Yep.
Yep.
So if the real estate in your brain is occupied with worry, and that's where all your energy is going. If the real estate is occupied with your uplifting intentions, that's where your energy goes. So
True.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot to say because it's like the law of attractions, like you were talking about before. Like um, we often think that if we focus on um, losing weight, losing weight, you're always thinking about losing weight, losing weight, losing weight. But the real thing you're focusing on is weight,
right.
and you're attracting more weight. you know, it's a little far fetched, but like it's a little stretch, but still, that's what it is. You're just like you said, where intention goes, energy flows.
I
Well,
like
Or
the sound of
attention.
I like the sound of attracting perfect health a lot better than weight.
well, that
Health. Yeah,
well,
exactly. Health.
yeah.
Focus on health.
Well,
Yeah.
because then when you use a statement like that, health implies so many things. It could be your physical health, it could be your mental health, your spiritual health. It could be how you're engaging your creativity, expressing yourself. It could be health in your work. It could be expressed so many different ways. So it actually is a much bigger uh,
Mhm.
landscape, if you will, than just say losing 10 pounds, right? Uh, and and uh, and you're right, Julia. I mean, wherever we give our energy, I think when in one of the things that's been stunning to me over the years when I ask people what we always used to start our retreats by asking people what they want, or if I was starting a coaching conversation with anyone, and the common answer was, hell if I know, that's why I'm here, right? And and the interesting thing is people know what they don't want.
Yeah.
So so they're quite able to say, and so if I would turn the conversation on them and tell them so tell me more about what it is you don't want in your life. So they really do know what they want. They just have to reverse the wording, right? I don't want to be sick. Well, you want to be
I want
healthy?
help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in bad shape. So you don't need to. So I want to again be in better health. I mean, it could, it's so, and I think um, something really important that people maybe don't understand is that the law of attraction, or it's actually our mind cognitively does not recognize a not. So if I say I don't want to be sick, the phrase is actually I want to be sick.
Hmm.
Because the do not, it doesn't register, and that's been even studied by many psychologists in the field of positive psychology. So again, going back to the kind of idea that words are powerful and thoughts become things, then we need to be on the forefront of catching ourselves where our thoughts are going to and saying, okay, is this the path I want to walk? Or do I need to kind of pull back and reroute my thinking down a new pathway? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of science now in the field of what they call neuroplasticity, which suggests that we can actually reprogram our brains. It and like anything else, it takes practice, right? It doesn't just happen the first time or the second. It's like every time you catch yourself going this way, you have to pull back and remind yourself to go that way. So
Mhm.
until that way is the one you walk down all the time.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And I think like when you were here for the Seekers Christmas gathering, we were talking about how women especially, we are so programmed by our parents and how our mothers especially have an impact on us. And so speaking of reprogramming your brain, when you're programmed from a very early age to be so critical on yourself, like how do you go past that, Betty? How can you, do you know any like concrete steps that could lead us to taking that other path?
Great question, Julia, and absolutely. And I, I think, first of all, just to remind yourself and think back, where do the thoughts, if you are very hard on yourself, where did that come from? And it was most likely not created by you. It was created by someone in the past who was critical. And it could be a parent, it could have been a teacher, it could have been, we all grew up with religion, most of us in our lives, and some of the lessons we were taught in church, which suggests that we were all sinners. It's a litany of actually feedback. Actually, one of my former coaching clients, when we started talking about the self critic, which is how I refer to as that voice, said, I don't have a critic, I have a choir. and and the truth reality is we do, because the critic's voice is a mix of all these different negative messages we received through the years from family, friends, preachers, teachers, and so on. I think one of the things that I learned to do early on, and I had and I will admit, I had a very, very large self critic, and I've been working on it for years. And I can be honest enough to say, oh, feel a sneeze coming on. Hang on. I
Oh.
can be honest enough to say that my self critic can still play with me at times, and so it's not like she or he ever really goes away, but we can manage them. And one of the first things I ask my self critic is, are you telling me the truth?
Mm, that's a great question to ask
I think it's a
yourself.
great question. So, and based on my, and you can even expand the question by saying, based on my experience of how I am in the world today, how I perform, the feedback I get from other people, how I am appreciated by family and friends. Is anything you are telling me right now truthful? Or are you out of date?
Oh, okay.
And when my critic's name is Beatrice, and when I used to get really mad at her, I would say, Beatrice, apologies to anyone listening who may be called Beatrice, by the way. Um, uh, but I would just tell her she was out of date, and that it didn't solve everything, but it was kind of like it's like turning off the ignition on that particular pathway. It just flipped a switch. Well,
Mhm.
if that's out of date, what's the current story? I can ask myself, and then I can remind myself of many of the things that I'm engaged in that are entirely different from what the critic is telling me.
Oh,
It's not unlike what I was saying about those neural pathways. The critic has a neural pathway in your head, and she walks in there every time she wants to have play with you, and bang, there she is, and you're looking at her, and you're pulling yourself down. So if you say to her, okay, you're out of date, and you pull back, then you have to have that other mirror, which we might call your self coach, or your self hero, someone, or for women, your goddess. uh, and that energy is the one that is uplifting versus putting you down. So rather than putting
Do you have a
yourself
name for
down,
that one?
that's interesting. I don't have, well, I probably call her the goddess,
Okay.
because I kind of like that idea. The goddess energy celebrates the very best of being the divine feminine, and it separates us from the male spirit as well, by celebrating all the things that women are really good at or naturally. So yeah, that's a good question. I may have to think about that, Julia. I may have to give her a name. Um, the other part, a book I would recommend to all women right now, which I found and read during COVID, and actually taught a course on, is a book called Fierce Self Compassion. And the author is Kristen, Kristin Neff, Neff.
hmm.
This book came out in, I believe, 2020. It is for women on the topic of self compassion. And I think a few years back, I went back to school and did a certificate in positive psychology. And my big learning during that year was the theory, the field of knowledge about self compassion. So Kristen says three things are really important in self compassion. One, be your own best friend. Now that sounds easy, but we are not our best friends. And if you
Mhm.
actually listen to what the self critic says to us, and then you even took time to write down sometimes what she says to you, which is even more punishing, if you will, and you asked yourself, well, Julia, I would say to you, if you read and said to Mai-Liis the things you say to yourself, what would be her
Oh my
reaction?
God. She would drop me as a friend.
Yeah. And you would never do it, because it's so ugly and it's so self-punishing. So then,
Mhm.
if we wouldn't do that to one of our good friends, why would we do it to ourselves? I mean, I think we do
Yeah.
have to start asking that question. And if somebody else said to us what we say to ourselves, we would feel equally offended. How dare you? How dare you?
So that's what I'm going to start asking now. Like anytime I'm negatively talking to myself, I'm like, would I talk to my lease that
Well, there you, what a great, yes. Or, whoever your best friend is, or your spouse, or your son, or your daughter. Is there
way?
anybody in my life I would speak to like this? No.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then why am I doing it to me?
That's very insightful.
The second part, second thing she talks about, she refers to common humanity, and I love this piece because here we are today. We're actually creating common humanity by having this conversation, because the reality is we never share with other people what our self-critic says to us. It's a private conversation.
Hmm.
True.
And yet, Julie, if you wrote down what your self-critic says to you, and I wrote down mine, and Mai-Liis or anybody else on the show wrote down what they wrote, and we compared notes, we'd probably find a lot of similarities. We're kind of basically all in the same boat, but we never share it, we never talk about it. And so it becomes even more brutal because it's that private little itty bitty twist the knife secret that we have.
Yeah.
So I
I
think
think
that,
that commonality is what kind of pushed me to do that post at one time. Like I wrote a post about, how I feel about my looks and how growing up, like I was always like the ugly duckling. I was, and I kind of really opened up and got really vulnerable and posted that inner thoughts, right? In the hopes of probably finding commonality with other
yeah,
people. And it's amazing how many people messaged me and commented and you know talked about having the similar um, feelings and similar experience. So yeah, we're all in the same boat.
yeah. And I think one of the things we used to do in our retreats is we used to encourage people to really talk openly about the inner messaging they were receiving. And then we did an exercise where we actually would write down the messaging on one half of a page. And this is an exercise anyone can do. And then write a new message on the other half of the page, which was an uplifting version of the same message. So rather than picking at yourself for all the flaws, switching the conversation to all the things that are really uh, good about how we look or how we appear or how we behave or so on. And it's a powerful exercise. It's a bit like turning the I do not wants into the I wants. It's
Mhm.
turning this, it's going from this is what the critic says, what would I rather hear? What would my inner coach or my divine feminine self say to me?
Hmm.
And then you actually have, if you do that and you take the time to do it, you actually have a dialogue or a recipe, if you will, for forming that new neural pathway. Because, oh no, I don't want to hear this anymore. What do I want to hear? Here it is. And you start reading it and reminding yourself what it is until it's embedded. Yeah.
Interesting.
Um, and the third thing, and we've talked about already, is just being mindful. I mean, many times the things we're telling ourselves are almost what I refer to as elevator music. They're playing in the background, but we're not paying attention, and yet we know something's not right because we're not feeling really good about ourselves. And if we actually took the time to mindfully tune in and say, well, what am I saying to myself? And you find out that you're not being very nice, right? Then
Mhm.
you could again have an opportunity to mindfully engage and change that conversation. Now, I admit it takes practice, and um, I have met many people that don't want to invest the work in reframing their inner talk. I can only say that over a lifetime for me, it's been really worth it. And my self critic doesn't get a whole lot of airtime these days. It's the rarity, not the norm. Whereas when I was younger, especially in my 30s, the self critic ruled my roost. And so it was
So
an unfortunate situation.
I think that so much of it is actually subconscious too. Like it's hard to actually, you know, stop and pause and realize that you're doing this and taking the step to change the conversation, because that conversation oftentimes is just in the background and you don't even realize that it's there. So yeah, you would have to really make a point to be there and, you know, in the
Yeah.
moment and conscious about it.
Yeah, and that's the key to the mindfulness piece. Now, another part, and this is something I really particularly encourage women to practice, which is a practice that can allow you to be more mindful. So everyone knows that at the end of a work day, or even for me now, I'm not working a lot. I'm mostly retired. At the end of any day, I often like to just go in and review my day. And in years gone by, my habit would be to pick on and find the things I didn't get done,
Mm.
or the conversations I had that didn't go so well,
Oh.
or the things that annoyed me, or whatever, whatever, but not necessarily the uplifting version of that day. So there's a place where you can begin to mindfully start some reprogramming. And as you're leaving work, if you're walking if you go for a walk with the dog, or if you just take a few minutes to pause at the end of a day, or you have to drive home from work, whatever it happens to be, rather than going down that pathway of criticizing yourself for all the things you didn't get done, is to flip into what I refer to as self-acknowledgement, which is to acknowledge the things you did accomplish,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
remind yourself, yes, well, maybe I didn't get that one thing done, but look at all the things I did get done, and there's probably 10, 15, 20 more things I did accomplish and get done than the one thing that was left unfinished.
Isn't
uh,
it crazy how we are, like, women are so focused on everything we didn't do? Like, I had my son over for dinner on Saturday and I made a full Mexican meal. Like, I had a whole bunch of stuff that I made. Like, I made tamales, I made sausage, I made rice, I made corn. And then, you know, the only thing I could focus on is the thing that I didn't get to do. Like,
Hmm.
I wanted to make tres leches cake and I did not have time to make it. And my mind kept going to that darn tres leches cake that I didn't do.
yep.
You call your voice, Beatrix, swearing alarm. You're gonna swear now. I call mine that bitch. Like,
Yeah.
like, shut
Well,
that bitch.
mine is too. I just called her Beatrice instead.
Both
but
start with the letter B.
But that's a great example, Julia. That's exactly what I
Yeah.
mean. You know what? People who enjoyed your dinner didn't care one iota. That was your undoing of you. It had nothing to do with anything else that anybody probably said to you, or the enjoyment they had of that wonderful meal, right?
Right.
And and that's the thing. There was an exercise we used to. It's of course not just women. Men do it as well, but I think women are more prone to it. But there was
Yeah.
an exercise we used to do years ago, and you take a great big piece of white paper, and you right in the middle of it you put a black dot, and you say to people, "What do you see?" And what do you think the answer is? You
A
say,
black dot.
Yeah.
well, but no one ever talks about the rest of the paper, which is all white space.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that what's happening with the self critic is critic sees the dot, the black dot,
Yeah.
but she doesn't see all that other white space, which is filled with all sorts of amazing stuff.
Hmm. How true.
Yeah. So I encourage people at the end of a day to really sit and write down. And writing is a powerful thing, because
Yeah.
I use the expression that was taught to me years ago, that writing makes the tacit explicit, which really means it takes what's in our head and puts it down in black and white.
Yeah.
And when it's down in black and white, you can't really deny it. When it's just floating around in your head, it's easy to just let it float off and out the door. So if as a result of this conversation today, anybody that's listening, if they took the time at the end of every day right now and just wrote down 5 things that they accomplished that day or that they would like to acknowledge themselves, because it might not be a goal they accomplished. It might have been an uplifting conversation they had with a friend. It might have been something, an act of kindness that they did for a neighbor. It might be it could even be taking the time to really stop and appreciate a beautiful sunset. But to acknowledge those things and do it as a habit for at least 20, like say 28 days,
Yeah.
one full month, they begin to see the shift in their energy. Because the other thing that's true about our brain, just as I said, the brain doesn't understand not. The brain also can't hold a negative and a positive thought at the same time. Can't do. So anytime you take a negative thought and you turn it into a positive thought, you're actually shifting the brain to a new energy, because the two can't coexist.
True. That is true.
Good
And
tips, very good tips.
mm,
So that's what we try to do with the seeker, right? We try to turn the negative into a positive. Like even when we're running a series right now on hate in Cornwall, and hate as a very negative connotation. However, like the reason we're doing this is because you have to point it out so people become conscious of it, and then you can change the narrative. Then you can take steps to, you know,
mhm.
um, turn it into a positive, like make our community better. That's the
Yeah,
ultimate point. But so we try to turn negatives into positives all the time.
all the
Yep.
time. And I appreciate your the way you do that. And I would still say, regardless, still be conscious of that word and aware of what it evokes in other people. Um, as an example, when I first started my business, because I did a lot of work with teams, and teams get in trouble, people get into conflict with one another, and so everyone there, people, a lot of facilitators and consultants used to do things called conflict resolution,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and I would never offer that. And they'd say, well, you don't do conflict resolution. I say, no, I do building bridges, or create what my favorite terminology was creating common ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I wanted people to be aware of what they're working for, not working against. So they don't
Hmm.
conflict. So I don't want conflict. Well, what do you want? Well, we want peace. So we want to get along with our colleagues. We want to find some common ground where we can work together effectively. We want to build bridges from one type, one style to another. Okay, then let's focus on building bridge and finding common ground.
Yeah.
And so and if you ever looked at our website, you would never see things on our website or programs on our website like conflict resolution. For that very purpose, we always wanted to make sure people focused on the outcomes. So I appreciate what you're doing, and it is an important conversation. You and Mai-Liis may want to begin to discuss. So what is the outcome we want in Cornwall? uh,
Hmm.
we want a kinder community.
Yeah.
We want a tolerant community, a respectful community. Um, and so moving that conversation away from recognizing, you still recognize that hate exists, but you do it in a way that says, what deters from us creating a kind, rich tapestry here in Cornwall that's tolerant of differences? Right.
Hmm.
And what are the strategies that we can use to address those issues with one another? And yeah, I think and we're seeing it unfold in the world in a very big way right now. So the way we can personally and collectively make a change, even in Cornwall, through our voice and the seeker, is to stay on always consciously choosing our words as to where we want our community to live. Where do we want to move to, rather than what the problem is? The more words we give to the problem, the more it grows versus
Yeah.
the solution, and,
But
and
I don't completely agree with that, Betty. Like, um, so um, we've been doing like the positive stuff for years and years and years, and so with the hate in Cornwall, what we've been doing is we've been um making the problem human. Like we've been telling the stories of people who to who it's happening, you know.
right.
Yeah.
So by giving them a face and giving them humanizing the problem, we're hoping that people are actually going to start seeing these people as people and
Mhm.
not a problem or an immigrant or an other or not us kind of thing. So it's been interesting. We've been hearing a lot of stories. A lot of different people have come forth and talked about their experience, and it's sad. Like it's really sad to see this happening in our community, and it's something that either I was not conscious of or has really increased in the last few years.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I totally appreciate that approach too, Julia. Don't get me wrong, because we do have to put a face to it. And, I met a young woman over the Christmas holidays. She's a newcomer to Canada. She is from India. She is, she's a, she's just a beautiful person inside and out. She speaks impeccable English, so you don't even know really that she was born outside of Canada. And she shared with me that when she left, she wanted to leave India because she and her husband are a minority there. They're because they're Christians, they're not Hindu. I wasn't even aware that only one point she told me 1.5% of the population in India is Christian,
Hmm.
and because of the new government, and not just this government in the past too, but the new government even more so, Hinduism is being the, the religion,
Only
you know,
right.
which means other religions are taking a bit of a beating. But she said, so I left India as a minority only to come to Canada and find myself once again a minority. And I said to her, and why are you a minority here? Because I didn't see it, right? Okay. She said, because I'm a woman of color. And I
Mm.
said,
Okay.
um, it was a bit of an awakening for me because I didn't see her as a woman of color. But with new definitions for just about everything in the world these days, anybody who's not Caucasian is a Caucasian white, and even we come in many different flavors and tones, right? Um,
Yeah.
is a person of color. And I thought, oh my Lord, you know, and so again, I think we have to build that sensitivity that, and Canada has always taken pride in being what we call the vertical mosaic. The we don't need to be the melting pot. We appreciate people coming here and celebrating their cultures and being part of the fabric of Canada. And I suspect that's changed a bit because of external influences, but uh, the way you're portraying things is an ongoing celebration of that. So I think it's an important role for the seeker to play.
And I want to thank you for using the word newcomer. Um, I see so many, and I've written an article about that in the past. I see so many people using the term new Canadians, which has such a connotation of assimilation and just taking over their identity. Most of these people are not even um, um, citizens yet. They're actually permanent residents, oftentimes,
Yeah.
who don't even know if they're going to stay here. And then you're stripping them of their own identity by saying new Canadians. It's newcomers. Thank you for saying newcomers and keep saying newcomers.
Well, and while I know her motive is to become a citizen eventually,
Mhm.
and so on. Yeah, it's that. Thank you. I hadn't, I didn't even think about it. That's just the way I, had typically referred to things. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Yafa, our writer Yafa is now a new Canadian. She's became a citizen, and I'm so happy for her. She traveled for the first time with her Canadian passport this past week, and she's thrilled, and it's beautiful to see. But to assume that much of everybody who's coming in here, and to just lump them into a new Canadian label, kind of implies that we're going to just assimilate them, and it's newcomers.
Yeah, true,
Yeah. True.
true.
So, what else haven't we covered, ladies? What other questions have been brewing in the back of your minds?
I think I've asked all my questions.
I
My-Liis,
mean,
did you have anything?
I've just been so thrilled with what Betty's all the knowledge and information she's been giving us. It's amazing. But I know your column for January, the Seeker should be out any day, is all about gratitude.
Yeah.
It's about kickstart 2025 with gratitude, and that's what I try to do too now. I've
Hmm.
been trying to look at all the positives of my life versus the other ones.
Hmm.
It's very important.
Yeah. And self acknowledgement, by the way, is part of that because it's something we forget. So sometimes it's easy to say, well, I'm grateful for my family, or I'm grateful to live in Canada, or I'm grateful for my freedom, or whatever else cross uh, your day. But what about gratitude for self? What about being grateful for the fact that you were born with certain gifts and you get a chance to express them every day?
Hmm.
So in my writing, in the book Me First, we talk about self acknowledgement being the highest form of gratitude, because it's like a thank you letter to your higher power. And to continue to criticize yourself and knock yourself down is kind of offensive to, if you will, whatever term you use to refer to your spiritual side, spirit or the universe or God, the goddess, whatever. It's kind of offensive because when we were born with certain traits, characteristics, qualities, strengths, values, and so on. And when we exercise them and we do it well, that deserves to be acknowledged. And basically a thank you card to God. It's saying, wow,
Yeah.
thank you for giving me this gift. I really appreciate it. So rather than seeing it as being, as I was raised, don't be conceited, don't say too much about yourself because people will think it's egotistical, blah, 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 right? Well, you're not standing on top of the mountain saying, I am the greatest like Muhammad Ali. You're simply having a conversation quietly with yourself that day, which is saying, wow, these things happened today. And you know what? I handled it well. I did a good job.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Or I used my skills as an editor or as a marketer, or we had some feedback on one of the columns in the Seeker. Good on us for producing this magazine, you know, and sharing and just being always conscious of that feedback that you're receiving, because you are who you are. And part of that self acknowledgement, of course, is also when someone gives you a compliment, the correct answer is thank you.
Yeah. Oh no, not me.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
had a birthday yesterday, and so I'm growing, Betty. I'm listening to you. I'm growing, rather than going into, oh shit, I'm olding. I'm getting older, and I hate aging, and blah blah blah. I acknowledge that I'm thankful for all these years that I've spent on this planet, and thankful for the opportunity to spend more time. So that's a switch for me, because I would usually just like, oh, look at my saggy skin. Like, oh, this wrinkle is so deep. So yeah, I've switched the narrative.
I
But
saw that yesterday and I was quite shocked, actually. Yes, good for you.
that wrinkle was well earned, Julia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like I have two there, and I call them, like, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not
I,
gonna
I
put
have some there too, and
names
I'm
in.
not going to say the name either.
Well, I'll leave on that note because you're a year older, and of course we're all gonna turn a year older, but
Yeah.
every and a day older. I'm reading a book right now and sharing it with a couple of friends called The Inner Work of Aging.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's a really really interesting book. I can even send. I actually think I talked about it in maybe my November column a bit. Anyway, it's The Inner Work of Aging,
Hmm.
from role to soul is the subtitle. But
nice.
the thing I'm really taking away from it is that of course, we live in a society that is somewhat ageist. And I do think that's changing because there are so many of us now that are reaching, we're going to outnumber the youth any day now. Anyway, that said, in indigenous societies, age was revered, and we were considered to be elders. And really, this book is really about us accepting how we look and how we appear, and savoring all the different experiences we've had, because that's what has contributed to our accrued wisdom through the years.
Yeah.
And just to
Mhm.
think about what the value of that wisdom, and what if we can mine into the wisdom of our elders, what we have as a community of people to offer others.
There's an old saying that my mom used to say all the time that goes, if, how does it go again? If um, youth would, and if elders could,
Yeah,
because, you know,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, a great example for me is your son, because Mateo, every time we have a little gathering, he comes over and corners me and said, "Okay, so I read this column, and I really appreciate." And he's obviously taking away some of the things I'm writing about, but the things I write about are just because I've had the life I've had. It's not like it's not even rocket science. And to your point, you were talking earlier about let them and be you. Like, it's not new knowledge, but we and yet it is maybe to people who are younger than us. We can't
Yeah.
assume that our younger folks understand and know what we know.
Hmm. Hmm. Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, we definitely can't. I have a stepdaughter who's 16 and well, 16, no, just turned 17. And the stuff that is normal for us at our age is not normal for her at all. So
Mm,
yeah, we can't assume at all.
No.
yeah.
And things that I take for granted, like a practice of gratitude or setting intentions, which have been part of my life for the last almost 30 years. I still meet people every day and I say, "Well, you understand gratitude?" And they're like, "What?" And
Mm,
What is that?
it constantly shocks me that this is a new concept to people.
Hmm.
That critically, it just means, we have all lived our lives and been in the influence of the paths that we have followed, and others have had parallel lives. So, and when those two intersect, then there's an opportunity for new conversations. And I think that's where
yeah,
the wisdom of elders can really have an influence, is at those intersections.
true.
Well, great words of wisdom from our guest, Betty Healy, today. Thank you so much for being with us.
A
It's
pleasure.
always, always great to start the new year with you. And I'm sure hope we're going to have you on the show soon enough.
Soon enough, as I get ready
All
for
right.
Yeah.
a few months. But anyway,
Yeah, you've
Oh,
given us a lot of things to think
yeah.
about, Betty.
well, yeah.
Yep.
And, for anybody who reads my column, they know that my email address is at the end. If they have thoughts on any of the topics and questions, everyone is welcome to reach out. I love those conversations with people, and welcome.
And Betty's books are available for sale. I've already put the link on the chat box so you guys can go and buy the book and read her stuff. It's transformative. So,
Thanks, Julie.
all right, Betty, have a great day, and we'll see you again real soon.
Yep. Bye bye for now.
Thank you so much.
So, I just got a warning that my battery is low on my headset, so we're gonna have to wrap this up.
Well, today I have to say is a sad day for me because my Christmas tree comes down today. So,
Mine too.
oh, you're taking yours down today too? Because I know a lot of
Mhm.
people take it down right after Christmas Day, and it's like,
Never before my birthday.
well, it's the day of the three kings, the day that the kings came to bring their gifts to baby Jesus, Epiphany.
Hmm.
And in the Estonian tradition, if you take it down before the 6th of January, it's bad luck for the whole year. So I've always kept it up. But it's
Yeah.
so
Well,
nice.
always kept it up because my birthday. I want to have it up when it's my birthday. But yeah, it's sad. Like I'm like it's so sad. I was going. We were in Vermont recently, and they had all these beautiful lights. And the day we left, they were taking everything down. It's so sad.
I know. It's gonna leave the house empty almost. Like, I don't
Yep,
know. It's a good feel, but it's not a good feel. It is what it is, but today's the day, so
it is. So I'm gonna have to shut down because now it's powering off. So
okay.
I want to wish everybody a very good day. Happy New Year's to all of you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Next week, have yourselves a super duper day. Bye for now.